Hello, everyone. I thought this evening I would share something about our feelings, and especially from the Taoist perspective. And my deep gratitude goes to Michael Wynn, who's one of my main alchemy teachers, for clarifying this for me. And his clarity on this has been very helpful in my own life. And so I want to just share it on, pass it on, play it forward, so to speak. Okay. So original feeling, like this is the question we need to ask ourselves. Like, where do our good feelings come from? Where do our propensities to be kind, to be generous, to unconditionally give, where do they come from? And this question has been asked down the centuries by philosophers and sages and all of these people. From the Taoist alchemy perspective, they come from what's called our prenatal self. In other words, our soul, from the energetic dimensions that are birthing this physical dimension. Okay, so it's really important to understand that this physical virtual reality is being created from the formless realms. And this is not so different to what modern physics is discovering now, is that the universe is made up of about 5-6% matter, and the rest is dark matter or dark energy. And they call this, you can't see it, you can't touch it. Amazing how physics is coming to that same understanding, right? So it's really important to understand that our prenatal self, or if you like, our soul, is generating these original feelings. Okay, and it's our soul that allows us to keep going in life, to keep moving forward, even though so many challenging things happen in our life. But our soul, and especially the soul's will, gives us the capacity to continue. It's just an incredible medium, the soul. And part of my training in alchemy and in the Romanian school is training you how to open up communication with your soul. And once you start to feel that flowing in from the deeper dimensions, your whole life takes on another level of understanding. And inner alchemy is so it's so step by step, and it really makes a difference, and it really addresses the issue that many people have on the spiritual path, where they have an experience of their soul, but they can't sustain it. They can't maintain it. So inner alchemy, and all the things that I share and with all of you, especially Wujigong, for example, if you practice that on a regular basis, it opens up communication with the soul, and you start to feel the soul flowing in. And then there are other inner alchemy meditations that actually cultivate soul consciousness, especially lesser Kan Li, or inner sexual alchemy. But I want to focus today just on feelings and on these different types of feelings. So many of you know, training people also in OFT, original feeling touch. And I got the transmission for this from my experience in inner alchemy, realizing that we have this original feeling, that we have this feeling at the soul level. And all of us, if we rested more in that place, life would be certainly more flowing and more in harmony. Okay, so what I'm going to address now is really the feelings of the personality, and really this is the domain of psychology. All right, so we have two types of feelings in psychology. We have what we call reactive feelings and responsive feelings. So if you go to a coach or you go to a psychologist, they're going to, if you watch Tony Robbins' work, for example, what he's trying to move people from is from reactive feelings, unconscious feelings, things that we just keep doing all the time, to responsive feelings, to being responsive in the moment. From the Taoist point of view, that's great. It's definitely to be in a place of responsiveness than reaction. Okay, so that's very healthy. There's nothing wrong with that. But something very, very important to understand is if you don't go down to a deeper level than just responsive, because what we tend to do is we tend to take sides, and we tend to say, you know what, responsive feelings are much better than reactive. Yes, they are. but often they're still coming out of the ego. They're still coming out of the personality. They're not coming out of the original feeling or the neutral place, which is deeper, which is at the soul level. And this is part of the training in OFT, is to access that more neutral place. And so it's really important to understand that, because if you don't go deeper than the positive, than the responsive feelings, they're great. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with them. But what we tend to do is we tend to get stuck in them. We tend to just identify with that level. So a friend of mine was sharing this morning, that she was on the phone and she noticed her positive feelings. She noticed that a part of her wants to contribute to life, and because she's done alchemy training, she could see this responsive, positive feeling that was coming up to want to give, to want to share. She shared with me that, a year ago, if she'd felt that feeling, she would totally have identified with that feeling. But because of the alchemy training, she could go to a deeper level and actually see that was just one possible response, to share her heart, and that she felt much more choice open up because she was aware of her soul, because she was aware of this, what we call original feeling. So original feeling is like neutral. It's like the base, it's the ground, it's having the awareness that positive isn't always a great thing. Many of us are so attached to the positive image we have of ourselves. We're so attached to it. And hidden within that attachment to the positive is a lot of unconscious reactionary feelings, things that we push down. So definitely in inner alchemy, it's another level of training, and honestly, it's made such a difference in my life. It's created a stability inside of me that I want to share with everyone else, and I keep encouraging people, please practice alchemy, practice developing this neutral place inside, develop it. I call it developing compassion, actually crystallizing compassion inside of you. So it's one thing to understand compassion at the intellectual level, at the conceptual level, or as a moral compass. These things are really good. They're important, to have a moral compass. I need to be a good person and I need to flow that way. But if it's only head-centered, if it's only conceptual, if it's only an idea, if it's only a spiritual concept, it's not going to be grounded. It's not going to be integrated in your energy body. Your energy body, your feeling body, is what connects back to your soul, to the deeper dimensions inside of you. So you can cultivate that original feeling. You can actually cultivate it and grow it and crystallize it and make it more real inside of you. And the Taoists have a word for this. They call it crystallizing the immortal body. Crystallizing the immortal body. You're basically taking that energy of the soul and you're actually giving it some, what the Taoists call some jing, some essence. You're actually making it more solid and more real. And why do we want to do that? The reason we want to do that is because for most of us, we're so attached to the consistency of the physical dimension, okay? So what do I mean by that? What I mean is that for many of us, our spirituality is just so up and down. It's so, some days we feel it. It's like, wow, I understand who I am. This is the truth. And then other days we're so swept up by our feelings. Inner alchemy has been the only thing in my life that has actually gave me this stability, that has allowed me to be able to become much, much, much more stable in my energy body. So my emotions are not going all over the place. They're not high, they're not low, they're more and more neutral. And this opens up such a level of freedom inside of you, because you suddenly realize you have so much more choice, and you stop taking things so personally, because you're no longer attached to this positive image you have of yourself, and you're no longer trying to push down these more reactionary feelings. So the last video I did, I talked about this, putting our will, our focus on at least 51%, shifting our will to 51% to our spirit. And this is really, really important that we do that. But what I realized after that transmission is it's one thing to say it, right, and to actually do it. But unless you have a committed daily practice where you're growing this neutral place, where you're growing your soul awareness, where you're crystallizing it inside of yourself, please understand we have to crystallize it. From the gene keys perspective, this is related to what's called the SQ, right? So the SQ, for those of you that know about the gene keys profile, if you look at that point in the profile, this is really a soul point. It's that place that is deeper than the personality. It relates to the first 7 years of your life, which is obviously where the soul is very strongly embodied in you, because as a child there's no ego incrustations, so the soul is very clear in that moment, okay, in those first 7 years, right? And especially the first 2 or 3, we're still so in those pre-heaven or those formless realms. So in the SQ, that's related to the soul consciousness, the soul presence. Now I love the Jinkies, I'm a great fan, but in my experience, contemplation is not enough to get down to that level. You've got to open up the soul channels in your body. You have to have some type of alchemy meditation. You can't do it just with the mind. It's got to open up in your energy body. And alchemy is a great way to do that. It's a powerful way. And this is why I have the mission of sharing it with as many of you as possible. So this is a totally new spirituality. It's not really well known here in the West. What we know here in the West is yoga and the Buddhist teachings and a lot of the Christian teachings, which are all very much focused on a sort of hierarchy, a hierarchy, a spiritual hierarchy. And in the Buddhist tradition, for example, the hierarchy is the formless, like the formless, the original self is the only real thing, and they have this idea that you have to get there and you have to reach it, and everything else is an illusion. And on one level, it's really true, because this is a virtual reality. But what's not really true is that this process of life, this evolutionary impulse is just as real as the original self, because it's being created by the original self. Yeah. So there are many things to consider here, but I would like you to consider that you have an original feeling, and it's deeper than responsive feelings and reactionary feelings. And inner alchemy, the training in my school, is the way to really soul and make it more stable. And if you're going to train with me in OFT, that's why inner alchemy is part of the training. And it's one of the reasons why, it's the difference between me, who's been practicing inner alchemy for many, many years, and someone who's new to OFT and has not yet developed the energy body to really hold that neutral place. So even though OFT is very powerful, because I train you how to connect in with that original feeling, you still need the alchemy practice to start to crystallize it inside of you, so you're not overwhelmed by your own reactionary feelings and other people's reactionary feelings. So you have to this neutral place, and you can't do it intellectually. It's impossible. You have to do it at the body level. So I hope this has clarified this idea of responsive feelings and reactionary feelings. This is the domain of psychology, all right? And it's the domain of coaching, okay? But alchemy is coming in at a much deeper level. It's coming in from the soul level, okay? The soul has neutral feeling, and it's what allows us to continue in our life. Developing that neutrality and crystallizing it inside your own energy body, in my experience, is the most important thing you can do in your life, because it prepares you for when you leave here, You know, it's a preparation. It's a very valuable thing. Strengthening your energy body, making it connected to those deeper dimensions, not at a conceptual level, but at an experiential level. And I want to be really honest with you. In my practice over many years, I've developed that. I've crystallized that inside of me. Now, my only wish is to share that with as many of you as possible. And I don't think it has to take you as long as it took me. It took me many years to start to understand this, and even to be able to explain it to everyone. I have a very good understanding of it within myself. I can explain it well, and so I can guide you there in a quicker way than it took me, you know. So I'm going to be coming down to Bucharest at the end of this month. I'm going to be teaching some inner alchemy courses. I'm going to be talking a lot about what I call inner sexual alchemy and inner healing love. And I'm going to be talking a lot about these different types of feelings and why we get into trouble when we worship them rather than seeing what's true inside of us. So does anyone have any questions? I think it's, I can see some interesting people on here. Yeah, Monica, hey, includes, great. Who else is here? Oh, Lofty, hey, great. Lotvi, sorry, I always make that mistake. Lotvi from Holland is on. Hi, good to see you. So soul, original feeling, personality, reactive or responsive feelings, the domain of psychology. And we can spend years in that, by the way. We can spend years and years and years in that. And we still don't make big shifts in our life. Okay, so here's my definition of change. I used to feel like this, and then you fill in the blanks. Whenever something happened inside of me or when something out happened, I used to feel like that. I no longer feel like that. I'm neutral now. I've grown beyond that. I've digested that feeling, you know. Here's a great example. I went through a lot of challenges with my mum. You know, she's 86 now, and she's had really bad health the last 10 years. She had some open heart surgery, and honestly, about 5 years ago, you know, I was taking care of her. I was living with her at home, and I had many feelings, many reactionary feelings with her, like feelings of guilt, you know, really being caught up in her pain. Many things, and I had to do some really deep work inside of me. I had to let all those feelings in, you know, first and foremost, really let them in, not push them away, just really acknowledge, hey, I'm feeling all these things with my mom, you know. And as I practiced and as I went through my alchemy practice, and I got to a place where I only had soul feelings with my mom. Wow, what freedom, incredible freedom, you know. And now I feel so free in my relationship with her. There's no guilt, there's no worry, there's no shame, there's no guilt, there's none of that. It's just freedom, you know. It's like I have a soul relationship with her, and I can feel her soul, she can feel mine, and it's really noticeable, you know. My brother's currently at home taking care of my mum, and he's going through the same process, you know, and he's really having to learn, you know. And in meditation, I had this great insight about my mum being this great soul, you know, and both me and my brother were like, why is she hanging around so long, you know, because she's in a lot of pain, you know. And I had this insight that she's staying, you know, because she wants me and my brother to get free, you know, to get free of all of these feelings, you know. And it was such a different way of looking at my mother, you know, at the soul level. It was such a beautiful experience. This freedom, you know, is what we're all seeking, you know, and to get free at the feeling level is such freedom. It's such freedom. And honestly, it's possible for all of us, you know. It's possible for all of us. And trust me, we're not here to detach from feelings. We're not here to just rest in consciousness. No, we're not here for that. We're here to dive into them as deeply as possible, take what we need from them, and grow from them until they no longer, you know, trigger us, you know. And then we can actually be of service to the world, because we're no longer being run by these reactive and responsive feelings. We actually have this neutrality deep inside of us, and it allows us to function in the world in such a beautiful way. So does anyone have any questions while I'm here? I'm just enjoying these Facebook Lives, and it's a great opportunity to talk about it. Anyone before I close the transmission? Okay. The other thing I wanted to say is that when you start working at the soul level, you start to get very young. You know, your health improves enormously. You know, I don't know if you know, but I'm 61 now, and I feel younger than I've ever felt in my whole life. I have so much vitality, so much energy. This summer I went to Bulgaria. We were trekking, you know, we were walking around, and we were walking up mountains. I mean, really high mountains, you know, and I was with some younger people, you know, and all of them, they were all aching the next day. And they were asking me, "Are you aching?" And I said, "No, I feel fine," you know. And I knew it was from my alchemy practice, because you're cultivating this, what we call original energy. And so you can rest in that original energy. So it has great, you know, the Tao practices are amazing for vitality and improving your health. I mean, and improving is actually the wrong word. I would say it's like you have this, you're just connected to the source all the time, so you need less sleep. You know, so Michael Wynn, for example, has some very unusual, I'm sure he won't mind me sharing, but he says, you know, he hardly needs that much sleep, you know, because when you're connected in with those deeper levels, you're not draining your life force. The personality, you know, it loves to drain the life force through our feelings, through our senses, you know. So the inner alchemy training is about focusing on the inside and just stay with the source at all times, you know, even in your sleep. So it gives you a tremendous vitality, tremendous energy, you know. And perhaps you can see it when I transmit, you know. It's such an incredible transmission, you know. So it's wonderful to see you all. Any questions? Any questions? Nope. You're all just listening and enjoying, I see. Paul. Oh, Paul from Cluj. Great. Good to see you. Oh, and Cornelia. Hey, Cornelia. Nice to see you in Oslo. Yeah, great. I love this Facebook Live. It's so much fun. Okay. So while I'm here, maybe I should mention that I do these evolutionary astrology readings, and they're very helpful because they clarify what your soul has come to do. You know, and I sort of combine my experience with reading charts with the gene keys, and sometimes a little bit of Bartzi, you know, which is the Taoist astrology, you know. So I usually, you only need to have one session with me, and I clarify what the soul is trying to create in this life, if you like. It's evolutionary impulse, and most people get a great clarity from these readings. So if you're interested in that, I'll write at the bottom of this where you can schedule with me, and we do it with Zoom like this. So I just wanted to mention that because it's I really enjoy doing them. They're very helpful, and they really support people, you know, and people get a lot of clarity from it, and they start to realize where they need to focus more, you know. And the crazy thing is about this life of ours is that the soul, you know, really wants us to evolve, and it wants us to experience more joy and more fulfillment and more completion, right? So there's a difference between completion and desires, you know. So completing something, like the work I did with my mum, that was a completion process. You know, I could have been on that completion process for years and years and years, but I did it in a fairly short space of time. I think it took me 6 months of deep practice, of deep, you know, alchemy practice with myself. And then I completed something in my relationship with my mum. You know, I released the guilt. I released the, you know, this, for a long time I had these feelings, oh my God, why does my mother have to suffer so much? You know, I had this feeling, you know, and it was really painful. But I eventually got down to a place where I could feel her soul and see beyond her pain and see who she truly was. And it was wonderful. And that for me is what I call completion. And our soul wants us to complete things. It wants us to complete things that are not completed. And when we do that, more life force comes in and our destiny starts to unfold. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this little transmission on feelings. So remember, there's original feeling from the soul, and then there's reactionary feelings and responsive feelings at the psychological level or at the personality level. And in inner alchemy, we're training to go deeper than the psychological. We're going down to the soul level within us. Okay, everyone, thanks very much. Thank you again for watching. I really appreciate, and I'll post this on Facebook so everyone else can have a look at it and read it. It's been a pleasure. Lots of love. Bye.